wisdom,
prudentia,
justice,
justitia,
temperance,
temperantia,
courage.
fortitudo.
Applying ancient philosophy to modern life, this is the Sunday Stoic.
Greetings and welcome to the Sunday Stoic Podcast, a podcast that applies ancient philosophy to modern life. I am your guide, but more like your sidekick, Steve. And on this episode, we're going to start looking at a few of the writings of Epictetus. We had an excellent introduction to Epictetus a couple of episodes back with the interview with Michael Tremblay. I recommend you check out that episode if you have not done so already. We're going to go through a few of the discourses and perhaps a bit of the Enchiridion, and then make our way into the writings of Marcus Aurelius in a couple weeks. Before we get started with today's show, though, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a few things. One is a crazy idea I have, but I don't know how exactly to get it started. So, as Stoics, one of our major virtues, the sources of human excellence, is charity. Well, not charity, but justice. And I don't feel I live up to that enough in terms of big justice. Like little justice, maybe, like holding doors for people and helping people when I can. But I feel like, I could do more. One thing I've done is I have a Stoic Cosmopolis group on Kiva. I haven't been keeping up with it a lot just because I have so much other stuff going on in life. But it's a way to donate a little money to somebody who's trying to start a business, for example. And these are micro loans that can help them get started. And it's a way to help out people around the world and attribute our help to Stoicism. So to let them know, hey, this is someone who follows this philosophy that's helping you out. So you can do that on the Kiva website. But also I thought, what would be interesting is sometimes we buy a lot of books on Stoicism and we read them, and some of them we want to keep forever, and others we'd be happy to share with someone else. So I thought it would be really interesting if we could somehow assemble a Stoic library, kind of like a Netflix of books, if you will. Except I don't know how the model would work. You might not get your book back. It might just be like, okay, I finished this book. Who wants it? Okay, I'll mail it to you. When you have finished with it, please mail it to whoever signs up on the list for it. So there'd be a master list somewhere, perhaps, and it'd be like a web of book sharing. I don't know. It's just an idea because we can't always afford all the books we'd like. And some of us have books that are taking up space on a shelf that we don't want to throw out, right? But we'd like to share. So if you have any ideas on how maybe that could be made possible or want to volunteer to help make that happen, email me at sundaystoic@gmail.com. Another thing I wanted to mention is I'm going to do the readings this week using an app that I've recently downloaded. This is an app available on Android devices through the F-Droid store. I downloaded F-Droid just to get this. I don't know much about F-Droid other than it's an alternative kind of open source version of the App Store on an Android phone. And the name of the app that I'm using is called, I think, Stoic Reading. And it has all the major Stoics listed. So, for example, if I go to Epictetus, which is what we're reading today, it then has an option for Discourses or the Enchiridion. So you can pick the Discourses, and then you can pick which book of the Discourses, and it has a table of contents, and you just choose whichever one you'd like, and then you can read from that book. Seems to be kind of handy. You might want to check it out. I'm going to use it today. I think they've updated the translation a bit of, like, Marcus Aurelius, for example, got rid of all the these, theirs, and thous, and I'm going to try it out this week as I read, and if you want to check it out for yourself, please do so. If there's a link that I can find to this app, I will also include that in the description or what I call the show notes when I post this episode. So without further ado, let's read this week from a bit of the Discourses of Epictetus. I'm not going to read the entire discourse, but a little chunk of it to give you a feel for the writing of Epictetus. The Discourses of Epictetus, Book 1, Number 2. How may a man preserve his proper character upon every occasion? To the rational being, only the irrational is unendurable, but the rational is endurable. Blows are not by nature unendurable. How so? Observe how. Lacedaemonians take a scourge once they have learned that it is rational. But is it not endurable to be hanged? Hardly. At all events, whenever a man feels that it is rational, he goes and hangs himself. In short, if we observe, we shall find mankind distressed by nothing so much as by the irrational, and again attracting to nothing so much as to the rational. Now it so happens that the rational and the irrational are different for different persons, precisely as good and evil and the profitable and the unprofitable are different for different persons. It is for this reason especially that we need education, so as to learn how, in conformity with nature, to adapt to specific instances our preconceived idea of what is rational and what is irrational. But for determining the rational and the irrational, we employ not only our estimates of the value of external things, but also the criterion of what is in keeping with one's own character. For to one man it is reasonable to hold a chamber pot for another, since he considers only that if he does not hold it, he will get a beating, and will not get food, whereas if he does hold it, nothing harsh or painful will be done to him. But some other man feels that it is not merely unendurable to hold such a pot himself, but even to tolerate another's doing so. If you ask me then, shall I hold the pot or not, I will tell you that to get food is of greater value than not to get it, and to be flayed is of greater detriment than not to be. So if you measure your interests by these standards, go hold the pot. Yes, but it would be unworthy of me. That is an additional consideration which you and I must introduce into the question, for you are the one that knows yourself, how much you are worth in your own eyes, and at what price you sell yourself. For different men sell themselves at different prices. This is a really important discourse by Epictetus, where he is telling us that rationality is our greatest asset, and that we must use it to live a fulfilling Stoic life. Epictetus tends to not focus on the perfect Stoic, the sage, as much as some of the other Stoic authors that we have. Instead, he focuses on the real everyday human and what they can do to be better. In fact, he says, will I ever be Socrates? No, but if I can die no worse, or maybe even a little better than I am currently, then I will have succeeded. So a little different viewpoint perhaps, but Epictetus is also pretty strict. I think of, Marcus Aurelius is like your boss that you admire, and you get to see his diary as to, what he's thinking about. And Seneca is like a nice teacher kind of talking to you about things. And Epictetus is like your drill sergeant. He's a little more in your face and a little more strict. And what he tells us today is that the rational person can handle anything that's rational. So if you can understand why something is happening and it makes sense, then you can handle it. Even so far as taking a beating. If taking a beating makes sense, then you can take a beating. But if it's erratic and out of nowhere and doesn't make any sense, then you're going to have a much harder time accepting it. And so what's important here is that he notes that what is rational and what is irrational is different for different people. So Epictetus says we have two major roles in life, and we'll probably have a reading on this soon. But one of them is your human nature. What is the role of a human being, and what are shared duties we all have as humans. And some of those might be to cultivate reason, to be good to one another, and things of this nature. But then we each have specific rules depending on what talents we have, what specific duties we have as parents or as a teacher or whatever your specific role in life is. That means you have specific duties, and you have to think about what are the roles of those duties. As a parent, one of my duties is to ensure that I do everything I can to take care of my child. As a teacher, I have to be a clear communicator. I have to grade fairly and eliminate bias as much as possible in my grading. I have to be just when it comes to ensuring students understand the material, and I don't leave anybody out, things like that. So these are things that we need to work on based on our individual roles. So he says, for example, as a human being, if holding someone's chamber pot, while they use the bathroom, I guess, that might be something that you have to do as a slave, let's say, in Roman times. And maybe that, and if you do it, your master's happy and all is well with the world. And that might be okay with you as an individual as well. So as a human being, that might be a good idea. And as an individual, you might say, yeah, I can do that. I don't find it to be beneath my character to do that. But if you as an individual hold yourself to a different standard and say, I will not hold your crapper while you use the bathroom, right? I will not hold your chamber pot. That's up to you. Only you know if you are willing to do that. And if you are willing to, if it's reasonable for you to not do that, and if it's reasonable for you then to accept the consequences of not doing that. And what's interesting, he says, some people not only won't do that, but they won't even consider allowing other people to do that. So these would be individuals who say, for example, abolitionists in the United States, not only would I not be a slave, I don't want others to be a slave. And then they will push to end that. So note that Stoicism is not always about passivity, but you have to know if you are a person who is an advocate, who is a protester, an activist, is that in your character? Don't become an activist if it's not in your character. If you're going to be a crappy activist, then don't be one. But if you have the skills, the roles, the personality to do it, you might find yourself in that role, and you might find it to be a reasonable thing to do. Later on in this reading, towards the end, there's kind of a quote you hear thrown around every once in a while, where he says, consider at what price you sell your freedom of will. If you must sell it, man, at least do not sell it cheap. But the great and the preeminent deed perhaps befits others, Socrates, and men of his stamp. Why then, pray, if we are endowed by nature for such greatness, do not all men become like him? So, if someone like Socrates is an example of an excellent human being, someone with arete, why don't we all become just like Socrates? Well, we know that he was a good human being, but his own individual character made him the way he was. So he says, do all horses become swift? Do all dogs become keen to follow a scent? No, because each individual has their own natural gifts, not just the general gifts of humanity, but their own individual gifts. But does that mean we should quit trying to be like Socrates? And he says, no. And he says, far be it from me. Epictetus will not be better than Socrates. But if I am not worse, that suffices for me. Right? So I won't be Socrates. I won't be the best podcast on the internet, right? But if I can do as good a job as I can do, and what I do is my best, right? With what I have, then that is pretty good. If in my life I don't live up to the discipline of Socrates, but I do better than I would have done if I hadn't pursued philosophy, that is in itself a good thing. Something to think about. So what is your individual character? Think about this. What makes a human a good human? And that might help you to think about what are those universal roles we have as humans, those things we must think about in terms of what we must live up to as a human being. And then think about what are your individual roles in your own life. And what are the, use the power of reason to think about what are the things that kind of person must do to be an excellent individual. And you can start to figure out where you should focus your will, the things that you need to pay attention to. We know that not all externals are to be valued equally. All externals are technically indifferents, but some of them we will pursue with more vigor than others if they are things that we should pursue based on our roles. So as a teacher, I try to do as well as I can for my students to help them earn good grades. Now, I can't control how well they learn material, but I do try to get them to learn that material, right? That's an indifferent, but one that I pursue as what you might call a sub-good. In Stoicism, the only true goods are those things internal to us. But I do, as a teacher or as a father, I have indifference that I value more than others based on my role. So you can think about what roles you have in life, what indifference you might then need to value more than others and to pursue more than others based on those roles so that you can live a good, moral, just life, hopefully full of arete. And think about that. Anyway, I will catch you later. Have a great Stoic week. Carpe diem.
Thank you for listening to the Sunday Stoic. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review the Sunday Stoic on iTunes. Become a member of the Sunday Stoic team, earn rewards, and be an integral part of the show by becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/SundayStoic. Contact the show by emailing sundaystoic@gmail.com or by leaving a voicemail at 501-503-3132. To find out more, visit www.sundaystoicpodcast.com. And as Steve always says, Carpe Diem.